Welcome to the Bookish Hour with your hosts, Sarah E. Burr and J.C. Kenney. Good evening, everyone. We are live and welcome to the Bookish Hour. I am one of your co-hosts, Sarah Burr.
And I am your other co-host, easy for me to say this evening, J.C. Kenney. And hey, I believe it's time to get bookish.
Let's do it. We have got a wonderful show for you this evening as we conclude our 2022 calendar year. This is our last episode until 2023. It's a mouthful to say all those numbers together, but it's been such a wonderful year. We've been so grateful for the support that you all have shown the Bookish Hour as well as our new enterprise, A Bookish Moment. If you haven't checked out our latest episode, you can find that on our redesigned, rebranded, what have you, YouTube channel. So again, thank you for being here tonight. And we are absolutely delighted to be joined by the wonderful Michelle Cox. Michelle is here celebrating her wonderful series that her Henrietta and Inspector Howard mysteries. We can't wait to talk to her about historical mysteries because for me it's so fascinating how these are created, and it's going to be a great evening. Michelle has also generously provided for a giveaway this evening, all 6 books in her series.
Wow.
What a holiday treat. Can't wait. So we will definitely dive into our giveaway a little bit later into the show. For those of you who haven't joined us before, just make sure that you are logged into YouTube to be able to enter into the giveaway. We'll have you type in a magic word that will have you entered in. And of course, if you have any questions for Michelle during the show, please feel free to ask them in the chat. So without further ado, I'm going to let Michelle introduce herself to you all.
Hello, everyone. Thanks, Sarah and Jim, for having me. This is so exciting. It's always fun to do a live show. There's just some excitement to it. So yeah, I write the Henrietta and Inspector Howard series. It is so far, there are 6 books out. There will be a 7th next year, and it will end the series. Yeah. So it's a 1930s historical mystery sort of romance saga that spans pretty much just a few years in the mid-30s. So that is me.
Now, Michelle, how did you get started writing about Henrietta? Was this an idea that you had been mulling over for a really, really long time, or was it a burst of inspiration? Like, how did you find your way to writing historical mysteries?
Well, that's a great question. So this is around 2012 or maybe a little bit before that. My oldest was diagnosed with ADHD as a sophomore in high school, which I know that's kind of a long time. It's for him to have been diagnosed, but it's kind of a long story. Anyway, so that is when I had a huge chunk of time, and I was doing a lot of volunteer work. I was doing a lot of committee work, and I just full stop, just quit everything, and decided that I needed to get my kids on track. And I was spending all this time like volunteering with other people's kids, and I'm like, oh my gosh, so I quit everything. And then after everybody kind of got on track, I had this huge glut of time, and I'm like, maybe you could write the novel that you always wanted to write, or you could go back to committee work, or you could get a job or something like that. So I just kept getting signs, and 4 different people from 4 different walks of my life all came up to me and said, you should write a book. And I'm like, okay, what is going on here? So I decided to try the novel, and it really wasn't to get published. It was really it was really sort of a personal challenge to see if I could sit in a chair long enough to actually produce a novel. And I had kind of toyed with wanting to be a writer, you know, in high school and college, and I just didn't have enough courage to do it. So for a while, I decided I wanted to be a doctor. So I spent 2 years in pre-med, and then I took a Victorian lit class, and I'm like, you know what, you cannot keep running from what you really love.
Mm-hmm.
And so I became an English major, but notice I still didn't have enough courage to do creative writing. So I'm like, I'll just read books, I won't write them, and just kind of put that dream to the side. And then, like I said, when my oldest was starting to go through all these issues and I had this time, I decided that I wanted to see if I could actually do it, to kind of conquer that fear. So I wrote this sort of coming of age story, and it was set in the 40s in Logan Square, which is a neighborhood of Chicago. And, you know, it took about a year to write, and, you know, then I edited it, and then I spent a year trying to sell it. And I couldn't get anybody to read it. And I thought, you know, either the product, there's something wrong with the product, which there was, or I'm, you know, querying it wrong. And so I went to the Writers Digest conference in New York, and I'm like, you know, I know nothing. Because, let me back up a second, because remember, I had written this not to get published, but friends and family who read it were like, oh, you should get it published. I'm like, well, I don't know anything about that. That seems really hard. And so, you know, I did some research and then started querying, and it didn't go anywhere. So I went to New York, and I was the newbiest newbie that ever lived. And so I found out all of this stuff. I was, you know, super wide-eyed, and I was so excited to be with other writers and publishers, and it was so fun. But I still couldn't get anybody to pick up this book. And so I decided to start writing another book. I'm like, okay, I want to write something shorter, faster, sexier, you know, more fast-paced. And I thought maybe mystery. I still didn't know what I was doing, but I thought maybe a mystery would be easier to sell. And so I wrote this one-off mystery. And while I was at the conference, I had almost finished it. And I started hearing about different types of publishers. So there's, you know, traditional self-publishing and hybrid. And I went to 2 different panels that were talking about this new kind of way to publish called hybrid publishing. And so I was really excited about it. And so when I went home, I submitted my big gargantuan novel, the coming of age thing, to She Writes Press. And they really liked the writing, but they said there's just no way we can put this through the press. It's just it was 240,000 words. So remember, I said there was something wrong with the product.
Oh, wow.
A little big.
That's a lot of words.
Yeah. So they're like, no, we can't do that. So I'm like, well, how about this mystery? And they said, we'll send it over. And they said, okay, we really like this. And so we'll take this, we'll publish it. So
wow,
that's how it all got started.
Nice.
That
is just so cool, because I'm sorry, Sarah, go ahead.
Oh, no. I was just going to say that, you know, we've heard a lot of different ways that people have found their way to writing. And Michelle, it really comes across that it was a passion that was purely driven by your need to write a book. And that was your goal. And I find that really admirable, because, you know, it seemed like it was the outside influences that were like pushing you to do more with it. And so I don't know, I find that a really beautiful story.
Thank you. Yeah, you know, now looking back, I can see that I was so super creative all my life, and it was always trying to find a way to come out. So it was like, you know, school projects, or I would create these elaborate birthday parties for the kids, and with these like really intricate invitations, or this gigantic gardens, or it was decorating the house, or blah, blah, blah. I was always trying to find a way. And when I finally sat down and turned my attention to writing, it's like, okay, this is where it was always supposed to be. So, yeah.
That's fabulous, and even though your first coming of age novel didn't sell, kudos for you for first writing something that lengthy.
I think,
That's a whale of a story.
and maybe to put it into perspective, for I guess like the average mystery novel is like what, 75,000 words. So
Yeah.
just
Yeah,
for
that's about right.
our viewers
70, 80.
to like understand the amount of like love and passion that went into that book, I think is something
Right.
special.
Yeah. So, it definitely showed me that I have the chops to sit in the chair that long.
That you can sit in the chair and write the book. Exactly. So when you were so I'm curious about like how did Henrietta and Clive like enter your world, because you had been focused on this coming of age novel. How did these characters kind of elbow their way onto the scene?
Well, okay, so I was working in the early 90s, not too far out of college, as in a nursing home in the city in Chicago. And it was a predominantly Polish, Czech nursing home. And I heard all of these amazing stories from the residents. And I always tell writers groups that if you have writer's block, just go sit in a nursing home for 2 weeks and you will have more stories than you could ever use. And so that is what forms the basis for my blog, actually, Novel Notes of Local Lore. I take a different story every week of just an ordinary Chicago person from the 30s and 40s and tell their story. And so I have kept a lot of the super great stories to hopefully maybe turn them into novels someday. And so that the big gargantuan coming of age novel was one of those stories. So when I was trying to think of a mystery, whenever I start a new project, I just have to have a little kernel of truth, and then I can sort of explode it from there. So I went back through my stories again, and I found the story of the woman who later becomes Henrietta in the novels. So a lot of what happens in book one, which is A Girl Like You, really did happen. So Henrietta is based on a real person. Some of the other characters are too, and some of the events of the book were part of this woman's world. So she was just this really incredible, spunky, feisty woman that would follow me around and tell me her story. And apparently, she was this very voluptuous woman in the 30s in Chicago, and she used to say to me that once upon a time, I had a man-stopping body and a personality to go with it. Like, what? That's crazy. Who says that? So she really did have this amazing life. And one of the things that really struck me is that this was the Great Depression in Chicago, and she never ever had a problem getting a job. So a lot of it, I think, was the fact that she was really beautiful. So she was always getting these jobs, but she was always losing them because she was always being felt up or cornered by a manager or boss or something, and she would slap them and then she would be out. So I just thought that took incredible courage to do that during the Great Depression. So I knew that there was something about this person and that there was enough to her to base a whole character and then a whole series on her. So that's where that came from. And Clive, of course, is completely made up.
Did you?
Well, I tell you what, I think hearing you tell us that Henrietta is based somewhat on a real life character, that is so cool to me, because reading as we get to know her at the beginning of the story, with her working in the one bar, and then her home situation, which naturally during the depression is so challenging, that reality or sense of realism really, really comes through, as well as her. You get the sense that she is really kind of a woman clearly in two worlds, struggling to live an independent life during a time when that really wasn't an option.
Yes.
So I just it's I could go on and on, but I'm going to stop because it's just a phenomenal setting, and kudos to you. You really capture it so spot on.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah.
When you first started writing about Henrietta, did you have, I guess, or maybe I should put it in this way, what would a 26-year-old Henrietta at the beginning of the first book say or think about where her character is when we see her in book 6? Like, would she be...
Okay, so what would an earlier Henrietta...
would she be surprised where she is?
Oh, yes.
Would she be like, this is exactly what I planned for myself? Like, how, I guess, seeing the character grow, how do you think Henrietta would feel about it?
That's a really good question. I think she would be really flabbergasted. And I'm actually editing book 7 right now, and there is a lot of reflection on Henrietta's part because she starts out in such a different place and ends up in book 6. She's in Strasbourg, she's married to Clive, and she's now very wealthy. And so she would have been, completely surprised. In fact, when we go from book 1 to book 2, so at the end of book 1, this is not too huge of a spoiler, they end up getting engaged. But in book 2, she's very surprised to learn that the inspector that she has fallen in love with and that she has agreed to marry has more of a backstory than he told her. So he's from a very wealthy family, expected to take over the estate, et cetera, et cetera. And she is disappointed because she thought that she was going to marry a Chicago cop and that was going to be her life. So she, in book 2, is a lot about her trying to sort of reconcile that and figure out if this is really what she wants. Mm-hmm. So yeah, she would have been very surprised.
Well, I love, and you just answered one of my questions that I was going to ask you, is that, the tagline for this series is Downton Abbey meets Miss Fisher, and Phryne Fisher is the total bomb, and I love her to death. So now I totally get it. I haven't gotten far enough along. I'm still reading book 1, but now I get the whole, now I understand the tagline. So that is
yes.
so cool.
Yeah. Yeah, Downton Abbey doesn't come in too much to book 1. It's pretty much the grit, but eventually we get to this sort of high society, and not only just a wealthy North Shore family in Chicago, but then we find out as the series goes along that Clive's uncle is Lord Linley in England, so he has a tie to the aristocracy, and so there is even another jump. Mm-hmm. For Henrietta to try to have to, figure it out. So there's definitely that upper Downton Abbey, and then we still have the other characters who are, dwelling in the grit in Chicago, and the servants and all of that. So it's been fun to write.
I'm curious, and this is also for kind of my own, because I'm currently like getting ready to end a series as well, and I'm just curious, like how.
I know it's so bad, right? It's so bad.
How did you know that the story had come to the conclusion? Because I'm trying to find out, like I'm trying to figure out for myself, like, do I really know, or like so I'm curious, like what your thought process has been, writing book 7 and, bringing everything together, doing that reflection, and just kind of what the emotions are that you're experiencing through that process.
Wow. Well, I could say like a fake answer, or I could say the real answer. The real
Give
answer.
us the real answer, Give us the dirt.
The real answer is that I thought this series was going to go on forever. I mean, it's not that it was the only thing I wanted to do, and I have actually written 2 other standalone historical fictions, but I had so many ideas for this. But what happened is that I wanted to take the series out of She Writes Press and self-publish them
Mhm.
because I feel like I'm kind of ready to do that. And I own the rights, so I can do that at any time. So I was talking with the publisher and Brooke Warner, who's awesome and amazing, and I do truly respect her a lot. And she convinced me to stay with them, end the series with book 6, and then go on to do whatever projects I want to do. And I said to her, well, I can't possibly end the series with book 6. It's already written and there's all these loose ends. I would at least need one more book. And she's like, well, do 2. Like, we'll do a 2-for-1 thing. And I don't know, she threw in a lot of perks and I couldn't say no. And I could see that this was going to be a really difficult process to take everything out. And because I also really, really wanted book 6 to come out in 2022. And I wanted to take everything out and not exactly knowing what I was doing. She talked me into staying, but she said, why don't you end the series and then it's a nice, neat thing and then do something else.
Mhm.
So I agreed to it because I felt like it made sense, especially because, okay, I'll tell you a secret, is that I feel like, I shouldn't say this, I feel like it's my first series and I didn't know what I was doing. It's when I started writing it. So when I started writing book 1, it was only supposed to be a one-off. It wasn't supposed to be a series. And then I decided to make it into a series. So I had to kind of change some things, like making Clive the heir to a big estate because I needed some drama and blah, blah, blah. So if I had to do it all over again, I would have outlined and structured the series in a much different way instead of just sort of writing by the seat of my pants. And I feel like if somebody comes into the series in the middle, I feel like the books get better and better as they go. And so if somebody starts at sort of the beginning or picks up a book in the middle, those are a little bit of the weaker ones. And so they might not have that trajectory to keep going. So my thought was, what, this kind of makes sense to sort of end this, start something new, knowing what I know now, and go on. And once I got to that point, I was really excited about it. But I did go through a real grieving period where I was so sad that I was going to leave these characters because I've been with them for so long.
Mhm.
So I think what I'm going to do is, 1, I'm going to do a spinoff of some of the characters. 2, I might at some point start the series up again, only advance it by 10 years. Or 3, I'm toying with starting a subscription service where I write Clive and Henrietta stories for subscribers and do it that way. So those are my like secret ways of, and maybe I'll do none of these and I'm just telling myself that so that I won't be so sad. But I really do think for sure I'm doing the spinoff because more and more ideas are coming about what I could do with that. So that's a very long answer to that.
So the reason why I'm smiling so much is because I'm thinking like, oh my God, I'm not alone because I literally am feeling the exact same thing of like, I had no idea what I was doing when I started writing my Court of Mystery series. And my readers who have been with me for a long time will be like, Sarah, like you like rebranded at book 6, like of course you didn't know what you were doing. And like I'm at the
Sarah,
very
we didn't
same.
care. We just wanted another book. Come on now.
I feel so much of what you're saying, Michelle, especially like, kind of setting what's next and being like, I want to do a spin-off series, but it's like, am I just saying that because I like need to keep these characters like with me so that it's like I don't feel like a chunk of my life is just being taken away. So
Yes, right.
I appreciate you sharing that with us because it helps me feel not alone.
I know. Yes, it's so hard to let go, isn't it? Because they're real to you. I mean, Like I made a 30s playlist and I played it for like 3 years straight. The first 3 years I was writing this series, so much so that, I'd play in the car. The kids now hate me because I'm playing the 30s music all the time. And at one point, I remember pulling up into the driveway and I wanted to keep the car running. And I'm like, you guys, listen, listen. This is their favorite song. And the kids are like, oh my God, Mom, they're not real. They're like, oh yeah, I guess they're not.
But they are real to us
Yeah.
and to our readers. And
Right.
I think one of the things, having this year finished a series, I have a
Okay.
6-book series that I finished this year. I think one of the things that both of you are really fortunate to be able to be in a position to do, kind of like I was, is you get to finish and tell that kind of exit story the way you want, you
That's
know.
a good point.
And for me, and not that this is about me, but for me, it was like, it's like, okay, my heroine, sleuth, whatever you want to call her, Allie, she got to go out the way she wanted, and
Hmm.
I felt that was. It is hard because we're saying goodbye to friends, not just the main characters, all the supporting
Oh
characters
yeah.
too. But it's kind of, I felt that it was one of those things where it's like, okay, this is what they've gone through, all of these trials and tribulations and anguish and ups and downs. So darn it, they deserve. For me at least, it's like, this is what they want. They've earned it. So whatever they want to do to have kind of that happy send off. Yeah, and maybe there's a spin off down the road. Who knows? Even if there isn't, they go out happy.
Yeah, that is such a good point because I know so many traditionally published authors whose series was like dropped in the middle,
Mm-hmm.
and that's it. They never got to sort of, as you're saying, create that happy ending or the send off where everything got wrapped up. So yeah, that really is a gift to be able to do that. It's not just for me, but I feel like for my readers.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
for readers for sure. I mean, how many times have I read a book where it's like, this is the last one, like what happens?
Yeah.
And
Right.
I think that we're now entering this I guess it's not necessarily new anymore, but I feel like it's gaining momentum of where authors can kind of take back the power of their work and be able to share it with their readers in so many different platforms of their choosing, that it's really exciting to have all those options, like um, the subscription service, like that doesn't seem like it was a thing, even a couple years ago, but now it's like
No, I
these
know.
amazing ways that, people can still get access to their favorite stories. And
Exactly. Yeah. It and there's so many like cool podcasts out there that just I love listening to, especially indie authors who just are making it happen in so many different out of the box ways. It's just exciting, I think.
Yeah. Well, I do want to take a second, since we're about the halfway mark.
oh my gosh,
Already?
already?
Shout out to folks who have chimed in. Our good buddy Mark Baker. Mark, you are the absolute most fabulous. I think Mark has been with us since our very first episode. So Mark, DHB, Farmhouse Reader, and Marcy, thank you all for chiming in. And I do love Mark's comment and talking about the inspector. Mark said, I would love to have the drama of a secret fortune. So
Wouldn't we all?
I wouldn't complain for sure.
yeah, right with you
Um,
there.
and we also want to give our viewers, open up the giveaway opportunity.
Yay!
Michelle, have you come up with your super secret word? I guess it won't be secret very long, but your magic word.
I do. I do. I have it. Yep. Do you want me to
Excellent.
say it right now?
Go for it. Yep.
Okay. It's going to be spy. So
Ooh.
Spy.
short,
Short
Nice.
and
simple spy.
sweet. If you would like to be entered for a 6-book giveaway, please make sure to log into your YouTube account, type in that word spy, and we'll get you entered into our raffle, which we will draw at the end of the hour, which is going to be here before we know it. So I have to ask Michelle, historical, how
Mhm.
do you do it. Like the detail, the language, the attire. How do you immerse yourself in a world that no longer exists?
Well, I think I just kind of have that sort of brain, where I've spent the first literally, well, let's say 30, 40 years of my life reading only the classics. So I'm very immersed in that sort of that those past eras. And then have always been a person that has loved, oral stories of the past.
Mm-hmm.
So again, my job in the nursing home was the most perfect job ever. I was social service director, and so that was my job, was to just go around and hear these stories. So there was that, and just family stories of the past. I was always just very intrigued. I was always the kid in the corner listening to the old stories while the other kids were out playing. So I just feel an affinity to the past. And when it comes to writing, especially if you're setting the book in Chicago, I mean, there's so much online, archives, and each neighborhood, not each, but a lot of the neighborhoods have their own historical society. So you can just do a deep dive into one neighborhood, lots of photos and all of that kind of stuff. So I did a lot of research for that first book that never went anywhere, where I read old newspapers and, looked at maps and photos and all that kind of stuff. And I used a lot of that for the series because it was just kind of there. And a lot of it, like I said, is based on what this woman told me when I interviewed her, that she was a 26 girl and a taxi dancer. And so I researched all of that and what places in Chicago would have had those things. And I am not one of those historical fiction writers where every single minute detail has to be the truth, because I feel like for me, it's more about the story. So even when I'm writing, I'm not like other historical fiction writers where I spend weeks or months doing this, rabbit hole deep dive, because I would rather write the story. So I just write the story, and anything that's going to require some research, I just write XX and then go back and fill it in, because then I'm not over researching it. So like what kind of car Clive drives, I can type XX instead of doing a deep dive into 1930s cars. I don't need all of that. I just need the name of one car. So that's kind of my approach to it. My weak point is the fashion. So I did buy a lot of books on fashion, and it's pretty easy to sort of flip through, and I'm like, ooh, this dress looks pretty. And so I'll just use very small descriptors. Again, I don't need to do a deep dive into 1930s fashion. I just need to find a dress that she's wearing to one particular ball. So yeah, it's kind of a mix.
I like that you're able to, like, especially with the details of fashion, where it's like you can give the reader enough to paint the scene, but but maybe not necessarily like down to like the type of stitch that's used in the whatever lace was available in the 1930s.
Yeah.
That seems like it would be difficult.
And I think right, and I think there are writers that do that, and I think if you do it well, it's very interesting and you learn something from their books. That's kind that I'm not necessarily there to educate people, although it is interesting that some people have written to me about that, like, oh, I never knew this, or blah blah blah. Especially as the books go along, because I have pretty extensive author notes at the back to talk about some of the things in the book that were really real.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, I'm trying to immerse them in this world and not, bore them or put in too much description, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, you do it extremely, extremely well. And
Thank you.
I also want to say Marcy chimed in. She said she's considering writing short stories with her series characters. So there's another idea that Sarah, you've done that.
Yeah, I like to do that around the holidays as like a gift to my newsletter subscribers.
So smart.
It's nice. It's like it's nice to have like a short visit, and especially like using supporting characters in the series to
Mm,
like give another perspective. I think is really fun. Um,
that's awesome. Yeah. I would love to do that. I need to get at it.
Oh, and Marcy also said she does it for her newsletter subscribers. So I think that's what you do as well, Sarah. I know that's how I've gotten some of your short stories. So
yeah.
Yeah. Or I
well,
would love to do like a prequel or like a little novella about the
Yes.
characters. Yeah.
yeah, definitely. Michelle, one thing that I'm real curious, I'm from Indianapolis, so, all about the Midwest. And, you've kind of mentioned you're from Chicago. And so one of the things that is always fun to me as a reader is when I'm reading a story that I recognize some of the like locations. And so I think that makes it fun because,
Yeah.
it's real. It's like, yes, I've been there, or I've been there, something, way, 80 years later, but I've still been there. Is that though a challenge, not only just writing from the historical perspective, but also the fact that you're talking about a real place, not just some made up city somewhere? Does that add another layer of challenge to your writing?
Well, it does to a certain extent. So, it is super fun, I think, for Chicago readers, and I hear that a lot from them. They love, love recognizing some of the places that I mention in the books. And there was only one time, it was in the first book. So Lutz's Bakery is a real place, and I got the location wrong, and I heard about it, and I was really surprised. And that kind of was a great lesson to learn early on in book one. So I make sure to throw in enough real places, but then I also have made up ones too, and that doesn't seem to be, too much of an issue. I think as long as people get a little bit of a flavor of the real thing, that's great. And I actually grew up about 3 or 4 hours west of here, so near Dubuque. And I have some details that only people from there would recognize, and that has been fun too. So almost like a little Easter egg just for them. So
that's always fun.
That's been good. Yeah.
Now, so Jim and I are both mystery writers as well. So we also have this like, let's talk about murder and mystery and mayhem.
Killing.
What is your favorite way? I guess I have a two-part question.
Kill someone.
Yes. What is your favorite way to kill someone? But what is also like your favorite type of mystery? Because you don't have to have mysteries that are just about murders. There can be other types, and I'm curious, like if you have one that you gravitate towards, or is it like, do you have like what's your favorite?
Well, my favorite is probably romantic suspense. So, which is what my books are. I will be super honest. The mystery is the hardest part of the books to write for me. So I have built this world and all of these characters, and the mystery for me is just a vehicle for them, a plot line for them to follow. But it's really about all of their interactions and their relationships. So the mystery element has grown though as the books have gone along, because I think that you have to keep amping that sort of suspense and that sort of drama. So this last one, book 6, really was, I loved it because there is some murder, but it is something different for me, which was the stolen art. In book 7, I've tried my hand at an Agatha Christie, because I really love Agatha Christie, and I love that sort of, the clues, who did it, blah, blah, blah. But that I am finding is really hard to write. It's really hard, but I have a new respect for Agatha Christie and for people who can write that way. So I don't know. Does that answer the question?
It does, and I think it's really funny because for me, the mystery is the easiest part. Like, because I'm thinking like, who's dead, who did it, and why. But then everything
Yeah.
else is like, okay, like how do I weave these interpersonal stories? How do I
Yes.
help my characters grow? How do I, continue to build the world that they're living in? So to hear your perspective on that is, it's really fascinating because for me it's
Yeah.
like the mystery is like where I always start from and then grow from there. But to
Right.
approach it kind of from that angle is I mean I can definitely see how it would be challenging. Clues are hard.
Yeah, they really are. I mean, I do the same thing. So I am definitely an outliner, and I
Mhm.
have to know what the main mystery is and how it's going to end and who did it, and then sort of work back from. And the same thing that you're saying is like, okay, so if this happens, then how am I going to get the characters to this point and continue to develop what's going on between them? But I do think it's interesting that the spin-off, the more I talk to different people that I'm thinking of for, off the characters of this,
Mhm.
I might make that into just a straight up, I'll just say it, a straight up romance.
Mhm.
So instead of spinning off another mystery series, I'm going to spin off a romance series. And the other series that I'm thinking of doing is actually going to be historical fantasy. So I'm
Oh,
really jumping around.
Very cool.
that's really exciting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love
So I'm
historical
hoping my
fantasy.
readers will follow me. So we'll see.
Well, I tell you what, Marcy also mentioned that she sees your new book everywhere. So, if
Thank
so,
you.
says kudos to you on your marketing efforts. And if that's an indication, then definitely, yeah, your readers are going to follow you. So one of the things, though, that I'm curious about is, your 7 books, you've got a 7-book series.
Mhm.
Can you talk about a little bit the kind of the logistical challenges when you have a series that's gotten to be that large? You've got
Mhm.
all these moving pieces, whether they're characters, their locations, there are other things. Can you talk about what you see as, kind of the greatest challenge or the greatest satisfaction, you get, because that's not easy writing a series that long.
No, and especially because, as you said, there's just so many moving parts. So the way I kind of, because I have so many characters now, it's incredible, and there's a lot of storylines going on. So I kind of see myself almost as like a director of like a big miniseries, like a period drama miniseries, and I have to think about each book or each episode, and not every character or every storyline can be featured in
Mhm.
every book or every episode. So I kind of have to make a decision about who is going to, have a role in this episode or this book. So that's hard, but at the same time, I'm always signing on new characters. So it's kind of like they're the new actors on the set, and when I'm writing them, it's kind of stiff at first and awkward, and they don't really know what to do. And we don't know each other very well yet. And then when I get to a Clive and Henrietta scene, it's like, oh, you guys are professionals. You know what you're doing. Okay. So it's kind of like that.
So you have your series regulars and then your
Yes.
guest stars.
The guest
That's a great
stars.
way that's a great analogy for putting together a massive series because I feel that um, there are times where I have like my core group of characters, and if one of them doesn't quite fit into the story, you have to make that decision. It's like, okay, like it would be nice to visit with this person, but it just doesn't work. And
Yes.
you will get readers that are like, I'm missing so and so. Like, why aren't they here?
Hmm.
But it's like, otherwise, you're going to be delivering a 240 word,
Yes,
40,000
right?
word book.
That's what
Which
happens.
sometimes, you know what, there are some books that I've read that it's like I needed this to be like thousands of words longer so I could visit with everybody. But I think that that's part of the magic of writing a really a series that people connect with too.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Um, yeah, it's funny when arguing as if I have any arguing power at the, with Brooke at the very beginning. And I was trying to, name all of these famous authors who have these like giganotron books. And she was like, yeah, but that's them and you're you. I'm like, dang it. But she was right. So maybe someday I'll put out that 240,000 word book. We'll see.
Put it out in a serialized fashion and people will love it.
Well, you know what? People who have read it have said, when are you going to publish that one? And you know what? I don't know if I can now because I actually stole a lot of characters from there and put them into the series.
Oh, that's really that. Now that's like a whole new can of worms when it's like, you have, we're always kind of working on different projects. And when you start to like borrow things from, maybe you got 10 chapters into something. It's like, oh, I'm just going to take this character and put him into, my other book that I have. That's real. That's how did you like make the decision, or how did those characters like say like, hey, like we want our time in the spotlight? Like how did that happen?
Well, I think after writing this series and writing the 2 standalones, I have come to discover that I kind of have this, how everybody says that, you're always kind of writing the same book, or you're always struggling with the same theme. And I feel like I have a mother-daughter theme going on. So there's always an evil mother in all of these books. So in that book, there was the mean evil mother, and she made it into the series in a variety of ways. Henrietta's mom is, but some of the other mothers aren't that great either.
That's I totally get that, and I just want to remind everybody real quick, because unfortunately time is running short. Boo hiss, because this is so much fun. Just a reminder that for those of you who would like to be entered into the super fabulous holiday giveaway of 6 books from the wonderful Henrietta series, Henrietta and the Inspector series, the secret word is spy. And the reason, so feel free to type it in to the chat. And the reason I'm keep continuing to talk is I've got a question for you too that I don't want to let you get away. So you write historical fiction, historical mystery. And we've just kind of talked a little bit about how you have to be careful a little bit about, okay, well, who is going to have a role and when is the appropriate time for characters to be in, in a story, because you don't want to steal from yourself. Do you read historical fiction, historical mystery, or do you stay away from it to avoid unintentionally borrowing ideas from other authors? Because that's one of the things I think authors oftentimes, I've heard a number of authors say, I don't read in the genre I write because I don't want to accidentally, take from somebody else. So do you have the opportunity to read much historical fiction these days?
I really don't, which is just so unfair, right? Because one of the reasons that you become a writer is that you love books so much, and reading was such a huge part of my life. And now that I have this writing career, I have no time to read. It's terrible. I will say, though, that I think I understand what you're saying, that the first couple of years I did try to avoid reading anything that was too similar, because I was afraid that it would affect my voice, because I was just developing my voice and I didn't want it to be influenced by anybody. So I took a hiatus from reading at all. And then after a few books, I felt more comfortable, like I had established myself and I felt like I could read. So I should read more historical mystery or just straight up mystery, but I do still gravitate to historical fiction. That's really my love.
So kind of then as a little bit of an out, do you have, and also in addition to Miss Fisher's mysteries, I'm a huge fan of the Frankie Drake mysteries. So yeah, and set in Toronto as opposed to Chicago. Do you have any recommendations for folks that, hey, if you want to try out some historical fiction, whether it's TV, books, whatever, anything, and I know I'm getting a little ahead of our program here, anything you'd recommend for folks?
Well, I just read an amazing book by Kate Atkinson. So it's called Life After Life. I had never heard of Kate Atkinson before, but my sister-in-law had recommended it, and it's just an amazing book. I really enjoyed it. I love Kate Morton, Beatrice Williams, Ken Follett, all of those, Lauren Willig, those people, Kate Quinn. Yeah, but like I said, I haven't been doing a lot of reading lately, but when I sat down and picked up Life After Life, I couldn't put it down, and I was staying up way too late every night reading that. And I never thought that would happen to me anymore, because you kind of can dissect books as you're going along, and you're not like that fooled. But this was just great writing, and I just couldn't help myself. So I would say that. And then lately I've been watching Bridgerton. Yeah. Season 2. Yeah. Which I am liking so much more than season 1. I almost didn't watch season 2. Yeah.
That's good to know, because at the end of season 1, I was like, I'm not sure that I need to, like, I enjoyed it, but I was also like, I don't know if I need to watch it again, or like, I don't know if I need to continue watching it. So I'm going to give it a try, because yes, I did enjoy season 1.
I did episode 1 of Bridgerton, and it just didn't connect with me, and I felt bad because, the set design and the costumes and the actors are all just amazing folks, but it just didn't quite work. But kind of along that line, did you, oh God, what is it, the name of, the other one, the Downton Abbey-ish set in New York City.
Gilded Age?
Yes, Gilded Age. Have you seen that, Michelle?
I have not. It is on my list to watch over Christmas when I have some more free time. Yeah, I really want to see that.
Yeah. I've gotten about halfway through that and then got busy. But, Christine Baranski, she's amazing. And that was really, really cool.
That's on my list to watch. Yeah.
I've also, we were also watching, we recently finished it all, The Last Kingdom. That was great.
Oh my God. Probably my top one of my top.
Are you a fan of that, Sarah? I couldn't tell from your reaction.
No one ever talks about it, but it's seriously like one of the best TV shows like ever made. Like, it's so well done, and it's so intriguing. I love it.
And the books. Have you? I read all the books.
I haven't read all of them. I think I read the first 3, or I listened to them on audiobook, and I was just like, oh my gosh, the world that, because I believe he like created the character of Uhtred from like one line in King Alfred's works. And it was just like how he took that one person and just like created the best, coolest character ever.
I know. He's awesome. He's a great character. Yeah.
Well, that is awesome. And I also want to say, Marcy also kind of chimed in, going back a little bit. She says that Kate Atkinson is her favorite author.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, awesome. And I do apologize here because this has been fabulous, but we're running up against our clock here.
Oh, gosh, we are.
The problem is with being the Bookish Hour, we're supposed to be an hour instead of, I don't know.
Sarah, the Bookish till ever, how long we want to chat for.
Yeah, Michelle wants to get going. But this is the time that we do kind of want to take a second and kind of do our little round table wrap up of, even though we got into it a little early, apologize, that's my fault. What are you reading? What are you watching? What are you listening to? All that kind of stuff. So, Sarah, what have you been digging recently?
I just began, I'm listening on audiobook. You guys know that I am just a huge audiobook fan, because that's really, Michelle, what you were saying, like never having the time to sit down and read is really, really hard. So the fact that's I can just play this book whenever I'm doing something that doesn't require too much brain power. So I just started listening to The Lindenberg Nanny by Mariah Fredericks.
I want to read that.
I am lucky enough to be, Mariah is a part of the same Sisters in Crime chapter that I'm a part of. And so being able to see this journey that she's been on has been really amazing. And really just so happy for her, and the book is
Wow.
incredible. Um, and regarding what I am watching, in a total, completely opposite direction, I'm also a big fan of anime, and I do watch a lot of anime TV shows. And we just started one that's called That Time I Was Reincarnated as a Slime. And it, like, some of these shows have the most bizarre titles whatsoever. But the gist of it is, it's a young man is saves his friend from being knifed in the side, but unfortunately he dies, and is reincarnated in this like fantasy world where he starts off as just a tiny little slime, and it's his journey to become like this super OP powerful person. It's ridiculous, but also like I'm so invested in it, and
Wow.
that's anime for you.
I'll check that out. I'll ask my kids. Still
Yeah,
no.
that's fun. My older kid would love that. Michelle, how about you? Watching, listening to, reading, whatever.
Well, I'm between books right now. I just finished the Kate Atkinson. I am, as far as like, I love audiobooks too. I actually was not an audiobook fan until I had to listen to my own series because I had,
Hmm.
hired somebody and it produced it. And so I thought, well, the least I can do is listen to this thing all the way through. So I did. And by the time I finished the whole series, I was kind of hooked on audiobooks.
Hmm.
So I love to listen to them while I'm walking. And I'm in the middle of an Agatha Christie with that one. With
Which
audio.
one?
It's the one 7-8 Lay Them Straight.
Okay.
It's like, yeah, it's not one of her more well-known ones, but very interesting. And podcast wise, I love the self-publishing formula with Mark Dawson and James Blatch. That's an awesome, really good one. So learning a lot.
Tell us a little bit about that, if you don't mind. I've not heard of that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Mark Dawson, he's a Brit, and he kind of tells the story of how he was traditionally published and then he went indie and he learned all this stuff along the way, and now he has it out as a class or like a course that you can buy. And it's a whole community now. They have a live conference in London, which I'm going to go to for the first time in June, and they do a weekly podcast. I think they're on episode. I think they just crossed the 300 mark, and It's great because every week they bring on somebody from the indie world. Usually it's a very successful author, and they kind of tell their story of how they did it and using his ad formula. So, or sometimes they're not part of that, but they just, have been successful, or they'll have cover designers on or somebody like that connected to the industry. So it's so helpful. I've learned a ton.
That's a really good recommendation, especially for our viewers who are also writers.
Highly recommend it. And it's a really great community. I thought there's so much scams out there, right? I mean, there's people trying to sell you something, every 5 minutes, but this is, seems to me at least pretty legit. It's a huge, huge group.
Well, and Michelle, if you need any tips, I'm not saying that I'm jealous, but my co-host has been to London at least twice, and she may be able to help you out a little bit as far as where to go, what to see. Not that I'm not Sarah, but a little.
Sounds great. We'll have to have a chat.
I have a lot of good restaurants in London to recommend, because I just like eat my way across.
I know, right?
Across the country.
Well, I tell you what, we're almost out of time, so I'm just going to shout out mine. So what I've been reading, One of Us is Lying, doing a little bit of young adults. The gist of it is, if you're not familiar with it, the upshot is it's kind of a breakfast club where everything goes wrong, where 5 high school students get sent to detention. One of them dies. And everybody thinks the 4 remaining high school students that were in the room killed him. So it's kind of an interesting, with my kids are 26 and 21 now, but when they were in high school and middle school, I had so much fun reading things like Harry Potter and all of the Percy Jackson books that every now and then it's fun to read some YA. So I've been reading that. And I also want to do a shout out. My wife is listening to, since we're talking about kind of audiobooks, the autobiography of Santa Claus. As far as a little bit of a seasonal thing.
That's a good one.
That she's, she comes home every day, and it goes all the way back to, it starts with kind of that legend of St. Nicholas around 380 AD. And so kind of goes up from there. So I've not listened to it. My wife is loving it, though. So that's kind of my recommendations.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Well, hopefully that sets our viewers up for the upcoming holiday season, for travels and wherever you're off to as you enjoy the remainder of 2022. Oh my gosh, it's almost here. It's almost at the end, but guess what? We've reached the end of our Bookish Hour, and we need to, on an upside, we do need to announce our giveaway winner. So last call for folks to enter in the word spy into the chat. I'm going to run our random number generator for our winner this evening.
And while Sarah's doing that, I'm changing into Ball State in honor of my kid who has just finished his last, exam before he starts student teaching in the spring. So sorry, I'm being a little bit selfish. Little Ball State.
We'll let you.
All right. Our winner this evening is the username DHB. So DHB, congratulations.
Yay, DHB.
Go ahead and send an email to giveaways@thebookishhour.com. And we will make sure to get your information over to Michelle so you can receive your 6-book set of the Henrietta and Inspector Howard series. Congratulations.
Yay.
Awesome. Michelle, thank you so much for being here with us this evening and sharing your time with us, for sharing your time with our readers and our viewers. Thank you to those who joined us here live to listen to Michelle talk about her fascinating career and writing, and we're really excited for what's next, and to see what happens. And of course, we would love to have you back on the show once you have your next steps, and have more stories to share with us. So thank you, Michelle, for being here. Everyone, we will be back in, I believe, January 12th will be our first episode of the new year. We are going to be joined by Lori Robbins, who writes the On Point Mysteries. I know I said a couple episodes ago that she was like our next guest, but it's like time gets away from me sometimes. And but Lori will be here for our next episode in the new year. And for those of you who haven't yet signed up for notifications for new episodes, you can find that at our website, thebookishhour.com. So again, thanks everyone. Enjoy the rest of your evening and have a wonderful holiday season. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.